Ambassador, thank you so much for coming here tonight. Reverend Father, thank you. To all of the fellows, I'm thrilled that you are here. I hope that you will hear in my story maybe something that is your story, something that will crystallize in you the sense of knowing that your future is around public policy. It is around making this country and Armenia stronger, the ties between them stronger, and that we can see greater democracies flourish around the world. And to the patron of this this great facility, thank you for what you do. And Jocelyn, are you going to toast at some point?
Yes, she will.
It's after. Oh, after I speak. Thank you for that very lovely introduction. So I'm going to start off by just reading a couple of sections, there's a few pages of the book, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. Before so doing, let me tell you what this experience has been like for me. I always thought I was going to write a book. It all came together because the 40th anniversary of the massacre in Jonestown was just in November. But I didn't expect it to be such an enlightening personal experience for me. And what I found in that experience was that my parents, my mom and my dad, neither of them went to college. So they, of course, made sure I had that opportunity. And so as a result, I always felt that I was smarter, wiser, and probably more sophisticated than they were. But as I wrote the book, I realized that I was really part and parcel of who they were. And our families do really weave, their threads weave through our cloth and make us the people that we are. So part of this whole experience has been about recollecting all of that probably wouldn't have happened had I not sat down to write the book. So I encourage each of you to write your stories. You're probably too young, some of you, to start, but you can start keeping a diary. But for all of us, I think writing down our life stories is really important for us, but also for the next generation. At one point, the publisher wanted me to voice the book and do the audio, and I thought, I don't have time to do this. And so I just voiced the acknowledgments in the prologue, and then they sent me the voices of other contenders who could voice it, and I listened to their voices. I thought, there's just no way. And then I decided for my children, when I'm long gone, they will still have an audio tape of their mom telling them what she thinks. So. I was dying. It was just a matter of time. Lying behind a wheel of the airplane, bleeding out of the right side of my devastated body, I waited for the rapid shooting to stop, then said my act of contrition, praying by rote for forgiveness. I used what little energy I had left to finish that prayer before the lights went out. But the lights didn't go out, and I slowly began to take stock of my situation. I was 28 years old, and I was about to die. My life would never be the one I had imagined. I would never get married or become the mother of a boy and a girl, or leave the world a better place, or gently pass when it was my time to go, surrounded by loved ones. Instead, my story was coming to an end on a dusty runway in the humid Guyanese jungle, thousands of miles from home. I don't know if it's possible to articulate how urgently aware you become of the fleeting nature of your existence when you are confronted with its end. I lay there for what felt like an eternity. Somehow, through the encroaching darkness of my final thoughts, I saw my 87-year-old grandma, Emma, the tough, marvelous matriarch of my family. All I could think of was, I'm not going to make Grandma live through my funeral, not if I can help it. I couldn't bear the vision of her sitting in front of my casket, suffering. If not for my reverence for her, I don't believe I would be alive today. She encouraged me to summon my will to move. Breathing heavily, I dragged my shattered body away from that wheel. Neither my doctors nor I could explain how I physically managed it, given my state. But I pulled myself up to my feet and stumbled around to take shelter in the baggage compartment. I survived. Survival against unfathomable odds can make every day that follows swell with a renewed sense of purpose, though not immediately and not for everybody. But with the hindsight of 40 years, I see that my baptism by gunfire guided me into the life I was meant to lead. One of public service. One that would ignite the courage to make my voice heard, and one that would carry with it a visceral appreciation for each new day. That sentiment was far from my desperate thoughts at the time. Truth be told, it would have been far easier to have closed the box on Guyana long ago, or to have pushed the memory away into the recesses of my mind. What happened in that jungle was a massacre, a nightmare. Though I survived, something within me did die on that airstrip, be it my innocence or my belief in the natural fairness of life. But I can't deny how radically that nightmare molded my perspective and my instincts, and how much it has informed the woman I am today. We don't get to choose our formative moments. Very often, adversity and failure shape us more permanently than fortune and success. That has certainly been the case in my life. The major setbacks I've endured, and there have been many, have actually propelled me onward, each one reminding me how important it is to stand up again, as difficult as it may be, stronger and more steadfast. Pain yields action. It can introduce a fervor to speak out for those whose voices are not heard. Surviving Jonestown crystallized where I needed to focus my energy. It convinced me that I had a purpose. All I had to do was figure out how to fulfill it. There's one more section here. In my life, I've been blessed with extraordinary love and brought to my knees by shattering loss. When I returned from Guyana, I decided early that life gives everybody their share of misfortune. Mine had just come early in life and was a pretty extreme dose. But I was wrong. Life is not always fair. Life is just whatever you get. And while Guyana delivered incomparable trauma, it was not the worst day of my life. I was on my way to Sacramento to give a speech to the California Bankers Association. My district director, Judy Bloom, was driving us through a torrential downpour when I got a phone call. "Jackie," my secretary began in a strange voice, "there's been a call from the San Mateo police. Steve's been in an accident." Judy turned the car around immediately to drive back. I called the hospital, and they put me through to a friend of Steve's, the surgeon that had operated on Grandma's gallbladder. "What happened?" I asked, feeling a slight wave of panic. "Jackie, it's not good. You should just get here as soon as you can." I hadn't realized how serious it was until I heard the quiet devastation in his voice. We sped to Mills Hospital in San Mateo, where they left me in the waiting room with no further information. I tried to be patient, but finally I couldn't take it any longer. "Let me see him," I demanded. He was in the ICU. They had done everything they could. Though his body was still warm, Steve was brain dead. Steve had been broadsided by a young man who had driven in that downpour, even though he knew his car had faulty brakes. He ran a red light at the intersection of Poplar and San Mateo Drive and plowed right into Steve's car. What was all the more twisted was that this young man worked at an auto parts shop. The details didn't compute at the time. It seemed too senseless, too reckless to be true. Word spread like wildfire among the physicians. It wasn't his hospital, but when he was hit and they were bringing him in, the police had repeated, "He's one of our own, he's one of our own." A doctor there was trying to get me to pull the plug immediately, but I just couldn't. The whole scene didn't compute. Nothing made sense. The lights, the tubes, the machines, everybody was waiting on me. All I could do was nod yes or shake my head no. I was in a genuine state of shock, staring down horrific emotional pain, slipping through it like quicksand, with nothing to hold on to, and nobody there to guide me through this nightmare. My soulmate was gone, and part of me had gone with him. He was being kept alive by artificial means, and they were waiting on me to end it. I shut off my heart and tried to figure out what needed to be done. Jackson. I needed to pick up Jackson from kindergarten. I had to call Steve's brother, who was in Oregon, so he could fly down and pay his respects. I went to pick up Jackson from school, and we drove back to the hospital. He was dressed in his little karate uniform. I took his hand, and we walked into the ICU together and stood in front of Steve's body, in the same way that the two of them had come and stood by my bed with a red rose. "Jackson," I said quietly, "you need to say goodbye to your daddy." He didn't understand what was happening, but he kissed him and looked back up at me, then asked if he could go to karate. Of course, I told him, and a friend took him away. Steve's brother Ken got on the first flight out and made it down a few hours later to say his goodbyes. I called Father Dan, who rushed to the hospital to give Steve his last rites. After that, everyone was just standing there, waiting for me to make perhaps the most difficult decision of my life. I kissed my husband goodbye. His lips were warm. Then I nodded to the doctor and walked out of the room. This is part of the story, but it's really a story of resilience. And for each of us, we have the ability to recover. Sometimes we don't think we do, but we all have that well of strength internally to help us overcome virtually anything in our lives. I certainly at times didn't know that I had it. At times I didn't want to get up out of bed. But you take the next step. You give yourself time to heal. You make sure you're kind to yourself, but you also make sure you're demanding to yourself. I tell this really funny story. It just gives you a flavor of what my family was like. After my husband was dead for almost 3 months, I was pregnant with our second child, and I was on bed rest because it was a high-risk pregnancy. And so they came to visit me. And my father came up to my room and he said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Dad, I'm so blue. I miss Steve so much, and I don't know if I have what it takes to bring this child into the world. I don't know if I can do it." And he turned to me and he said, "Jackie, it's been 3 months since Steve died. Get over it." I was so incensed. I told him to get out of my room, and I didn't talk to him for 2 weeks. But as it sunk in, there's a very powerful message in there. I mean, we have to get over it. And you do it in conjunction with a lot of resources. I talk in the book about the 3 F's in my life: family, friends, and faith. And those are the 3 elements that have helped me get through the darkest moments. And it's what will, I believe, help most people endure almost anything.